We are now going to move on to our third finalist, and our third finalist is Permits Plus. Experienced compliance manager Amy Bedeau is the CEO and founder of Permits Plus LLC. This startup is located in Jordan. She plans to revolutionize the way our construction trade pulls permits and meets their compliance requirements. Amy is one of only 46 certified permit technicians in our state and accredited by the International Code Council. Please welcome Amy Bedeau.
So last Thursday, I set out to create a PowerPoint presentation for tonight's event. And I worked on it all morning, afternoon, and evening, and got up early on Friday, worked on it all morning and afternoon. And then on Friday evening, I was so overwhelmed and frustrated, I was ready to throw in the towel. You see, I was no further ahead than where I was the day before. And I had lost 2 days and to meet my deadline of Monday. And at that moment, I realized this is how I was feeling. And it was at that point I decided I needed a break. And so I went for a walk and I went outside and I started to think to myself, Amy, what's your problem? Okay, what is your issue? What's going on? What's holding you back? Why can't you get this? And I thought of a couple things. And the first thing that came to mind was that if you're going to be good at something, you need to understand the process. But the second thing that came to mind was, if you're going to be great at something, you need to live and breathe it. And I don't live and breathe PowerPoint. I live and breathe permits and compliance. And while I don't live and breathe PowerPoint, I'm not even good at it, to be honest. And in fact, this is my first PowerPoint presentation in my life. But despite that, what really came clear to me that at that moment was that this is exactly how our contractors are feeling when they're dealing with compliance and permits. The process itself is frustrating and it's very time-consuming. Compliance is already difficult and it's a very fluid environment. It is constantly changing. Now, our small and mid-sized customers or businesses, the mid and small-sized contractors, they don't typically have the resources or the volume of permits that they need to become great at this. So it's already difficult for them. Now add into the fact that with electronic permitting and plan review processes, all of these platforms that are being used and all the different nuances of every jurisdiction, and you can see why they're overwhelmed. Now, in the last 5 years, there's been an evolution for us to ditch our municipal governments to ditch old paper platforms and to convert to electronic methods. But what that brought with it is understanding each and every platform that's being used. And each jurisdiction is different, and each platform is set up to meet their individual requirements and to meet their needs, their wants, and their budgets. It has done nothing for the small to the contractors, essentially. So in the state of Minnesota, we currently have 854 municipal governments. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know any contractor that's only worked in just one city or within one jurisdiction. They work in many. So now you're beginning to see the real problem. There's just too many platforms, and they don't have a dedicated expert on their team. So what does this mean? This means when we're not good at something, that means we miss crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And for a contractor, that can mean non-compliance. What does non-compliance get you? Or the contractor, it gets them fines and fees. They could be kicked off of a job, a stop work order, investigations. It could be in legal action, but worse yet is getting a damaged reputation. So how do we fix this problem? Well, it's quite simple. We're going to outsource the solution to Permits Plus. Because at Permits Plus, this is all we do, and we're good at it. In fact, I'm going to take it one step further and tell you we're exceptional at it. And how? So working with Permits Plus means really streamlining the process. We're going to provide complete permit administration and oversight for our small to mid-sized contractors. How are we going to do this, you ask? Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. By streamlining this process, we're going to save our contractors time. We're going to eliminate their frustration. We're going to provide them with a faster turnaround on their permits. We're going to enhance the communication. They're going to know the status of their permits at all time. This is going to help mitigate risk, and now they have an expert on their team. So how are we going to do this? We're going to do this by bringing them our client portal. And instead of using 854 platforms, they're going to have one. And they're going to be able to access this platform anytime, anywhere using a web browser and or mobile app. They're going to have up-to-date permit information at their fingertips. And so far as I know, this hasn't been done yet. And they're also going to be able to retrieve their historical data. And that's important and critical, because when you're in the field and an inspector walks in, you better know if they say that they say there's an open permit. No, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, we have it right here, and this was closed. And the last feature that we want to offer is geo-search capability, and this is really an awesome tool, because if you're in a building, they can quickly see which units they're working in, which ones and what permit statuses are going on. So that brings us to our competition, and right now there really isn't anybody. You can find on the internet maybe a couple dozen different places that are doing something similar, but not locally and not in Minnesota. There's an online platform. There's no personal connection there. It's just you submit an application, they deal with it and send it back to you. So our competitive edge is this, that we want to be the forerunner in this market and a leader in this industry, bringing this to market. And we bring forth an established footprint and our solid reputation. We're going to bring forth that custom tailored approach for our tier 1 clients that need, we want to have that relationship with those clients that's personal, that meets their business and trade compliance needs. Our client tools, we're bringing that forward, and our industry affiliations and resources means we have the right information and connections to get things done. Our commitment to excellence means we will retain high caliber talent. So while we're in the conception phase of this business and we don't have any paying clients, we are gaining traction and we are receiving a lot of interest and support. So tonight I'm just going to showcase 2 highly respected organizations within this industry. The first is from a board of director from the Minnesota Automatic Fire Alarm Association, and he says, pursue this industry. And the second is coming from an alarm system auditor from Underwriter Laboratories, highly accredited organization, as you know. And she says there is a need within the construction trade to meet compliance requirements, and this concept would fill this necessary void. This is validation, and this is what motivates me to move forward. So our market, I'm going to kind of go through this quickly, but our market here, our objective is to hit these markets. And the first market we're going to go right after is going to be the fire and life safety market. This is the area I have worked personally and know intimately and have been here for 5 years. I am connected and I know fire and life safety inside and out. This is easy for me. Again, I live and breathe it. So that's the first market we're going after. And the second market is, or it falls over into or spills into the Minnesota construction industry. And what we're really focused on are those small to mid-sized businesses that actually have less than 249 employees. And, oops. And then there, of course, there is the larger market, which is the U.S. construction industry. And while this is not only needed in Minnesota, it is needed nationally. So I have some quick statistics here, but it looks like I'm running out of time and didn't quite meet my objectives. This is a report on electrical permits, and in the last year, there were 70,000 electrical permits pulled alone by the Department of Labor and Industry, and this is not including any other trades, mechanical, heating, plumbing, fire. There is a lot of opportunity out there. I do apologize, I'm gonna blow through this. So in the end, in closing, just like a contractor, I somehow managed to get the job done tonight, and my application has been submitted to you. While I await your final plan review decision, I'm going to leave you with this final thought, that COVID has changed the way we do business, and even long after COVID is gone, we will never return to what once was in business. For Permits Plus, the opportunity exists right here and right now, because supporting these businesses while their need is the greatest will define who we are as a company, and these relationships will be what carries us long into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've sat through hundreds and hundreds of presentations over a 20-year career, and let me tell you, you did a really good job, really good job. You were clear, you were concise, you made it conversational. The PowerPoint was very well done. So to think that that was your first ever I'm super impressed, very impressed. So thank you for that. You mentioned, and I know you couldn't get through your whole presentation, and I've been there. You prepare 50 slides and talk about 3. It's totally normal, so don't worry about it. So you mentioned less than 249 employees, and that was one of my questions coming in, because I would imagine there's probably on the small end, there are construction companies that probably don't, they don't submit enough permits to need to outsource it. But then there are larger companies that probably have full-time employees that do nothing but permitting. And so am I correct in assuming it's probably in that kind of 10 to, did you say 249 employees? It's that kind of SMB construction market that you would be an extension of their team, and there's enough permitting there to drive business to you as an outsourcer?
That is correct. For the last 5 years, I've been working for a company, and we had about 150 employees. And I was the only person within that organization that did any compliance or pulled these permits. And I will tell you that within the last year I was there, I pulled over 425 permits that year. That's a significant amount. But what I found was, even working with other contractors, because a lot of times they would subcontract to us, that even though they were larger companies, they didn't have a person that really lived and breathed it like we did. I think it's a big challenge for most companies, and a lot of companies, and I know one in particular that is a pretty heavy hitter in the industry, and they're very large. And most oftentimes, they rely on their project managers, right, to pull these permits, which to me, maybe you could have done that back in the day when we were doing paper submissions, but this is really growing into something complex. This is a beast. And I don't know. I think the future is changing in business, and they may need to reevaluate, and they may need to have their own in-house experts. But I really feel that that's a really sweet spot between the 249 and less. Yes.
Agree, and I agree that this is a huge problem. I've done a couple projects just personally at my own home, and and navigating through that process has been troublesome. I know we didn't get a chance to go through your financials, but I'm assuming the business model is the fact that these 10 to 249 employees, they can't afford let's say a $70,000 a year person to do this full time, but that permitting number is such that they can't afford a third of a person or 20% of a person. And is that how you price your service?
I've been working with Lee Hall a little bit on pricing strategy, and I was really torn by that because I'm here to make money, right? And each permit is very unique and individual, and sometimes you can make a submission and it flies right through. And there are other times or other jurisdictions that are particularly sticky, it could be redlined and reviewed and back and forth 20 times. So having a flat fee was kind of difficult. And some of the projections that I have in my business plan, we came up with just a standard flat rate using a 2-tier client system. One is our tier 1 clients. And these are the ones that were really like, they're recurring revenue. They're coming back to us all the time. They're using us to outsource. And then the tier 2 clients obviously have a higher rate because they're just your one-offs. Hey, I need a permit. Can you help me, kind of a thing. I'm not sure if I answered your question, so let me clarify if I...
No, you did. They can buy 2 drinks basically. The large drink is a subscription, and it's based on volume, and then
Correct.
the smaller coffee, if you will, is per drink. If they wanted to buy per from a count standpoint, let's say 10 permits or 20 permits at a time, they could also do that as well. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Got it.
And then there was also some additional streams of revenue that I didn't have time to include in that. So that would be add-on services such as expediting, or if we need to deliver because some jurisdiction is still utilizing a paper format, we would have to courier that out. So there are additional streams of revenue that we could include.
Great. Thank you. Good job.
You're welcome.
I love how you said in your written materials, permits are a huge pain, because I worked with several clients involved in various industries who either have licensing or permitting requirements, and across the board, that's the unanimous feeling about them is that they are a huge pain. So it's a pain point and something that is a problem that you're willing to solve. I've worked with another company who has a similar business, but in a different industry, so there's no conflict here. But it's been incredibly well received, and so I take that as further evidence that you're going down the right path. Because this still is in the conceptual phase a little bit, I'm wondering if you can talk about how you plan to adapt a singular platform to all the different requirements across multiple jurisdictions. So if each municipality has its own process and it requires slightly different types of information, how do you manage that in creating an electronic platform?
Sorry about that. So yeah, that's an interesting challenge for me, isn't it? And I've dealt with this in the past. When I first started at my last employer and took over the permits, that was one of my biggest challenges, and the way that they were doing wasn't working for me. So I actually developed, it was on paper, of course, using an Excel spreadsheet, but I actually developed my own system for managing that information. Now, while it doesn't stay current every time, it had all of the details that I needed to be able to get the job done quickly and efficiently, including housing all of the contacts that I needed or my connections to make things happen quickly. They're in my pocket. But yeah, those are all things that I would need to really look at. Of course, until I would add jurisdictions as needed. So daily, as we entered into new territory, is when I would create and add that new information. So, but as far as relaying it back to the customer, or the contractor, and that platform, I really am gonna need some business help to kind of define how we're gonna do that. I am definitely an end user, so that is not my area of expertise, and I'm gonna need to rely on some professional assistance.
Very normal. A lot of software companies are started with spreadsheets and sticky notes on whiteboards, working through the workflow, so totally understand.
And the fact that you've been able to do that with your process already is definitely a positive sign that you'll be able to communicate that easily and well to a third party, whether it's a programmer, developer, someone to help you take all of your expertise out of your mind and embody it in this electronic platform.
Hi. Thanks for coming in. It's a really interesting business. I'm in the manufacturing business for plumbing, heating, and fire sprinklers, so I kind of
Awesome.
know the people that you're working with as well, and understand how you can fill that void. And I think that that 10 to 250 seems to be the point at which you can either carry the overhead or not for that permitting function. So that, I think that makes a lot of sense. I will question, I think you're really close to the business, doing the business. I wonder if you're, maybe need some more help with pricing the business, because it seems like you might be underpricing relative to the complexity, or that one-size-fits-all kind of a menu. So maybe you do have a more of a blown-out menu, and this is more for example, but I would really look at that as an option. I think there's more room to make more revenue per transaction.
I think I agree with that, and I probably could use a little coaching on selling that to my clients. I really struggled with that, and like I said, I've been working with Lee a little bit and trying to develop that. But again, you know, when I started thinking about this, I started working on this like 3 years ago. And then in March, I lost my job this year. And so I thought, okay, now's the time. But the more I really thought about it, when I was even working on this presentation, what really dawned on me was really the impact and how we've changed business during COVID. Because you just took an evolution of electronic, converting to electronic, and created a revolution. Now, currently I'm not employed, right? And I'm trying to go off on my own. But a lot has changed in the last 6 months. So I can only speculate. I can imagine the nightmare they're living in. But that nightmare would become not my nightmare real quickly. And so with your down your train of thought here, I agree with that, because the challenge we're facing right now is not the same as what we did 6 months ago.
And I think, well, in the regulatory environment is either on purpose complex and hard to navigate, or it's just the nature of all of those jurisdictions trying to do the best for their citizens, or however that evolution works. But being the gatekeeper or the enabler, the Sherpa through that, which is kind of what you're doing, it's very similar, I think, to, I do a lot of international travel, and every country's got different visa requirements. So when I submit or get an airline ticket, I get something back from an agency that says, do you want a visa to go with that? Because we'll do that for you. And that's exactly the same kind of thing. They know all the ins and outs of that. But there is a significant amount of value in being that gatekeeper and then solving that problem for somebody so they don't have to think about it. So that's where my train of thought on that comes from. And I just know the frustration from the construction industry as regards dealing with all of those different jurisdictions. So that'd just be something that I would look at. But otherwise, it seems to me that the plan's pretty solid.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, judges. Thank you, Amy. Any last quick questions?
Well, I guess the question that I wanted to ask you is about what you're thinking about is your kind of key action items and timelines, and maybe some kind of quick wins about what are you thinking of doing first to get some revenue generation? Is your thought that you have to create this customer portal first before you even begin, or where are you really in kind of development and true launch of your idea?
I'd like to be able to bring this concept to market sooner rather than later. I don't think it's going to take a lot of time to launch, and I don't need a lot of resources, you know. I mean, to be honest, I don't have any cost of goods except for my labor initially. What I was really hoping was that I wouldn't have to live on an Excel spreadsheet. And so I would really like to, when I roll this out, I'd like to be able to roll out all of these, the features that I'm looking to have in this business. And I have a lot of interest already, and I've talked to a lot of contractors, and they're ready to roll when I'm ready to roll. But I was really hoping I could have my head wrapped around the kind of the rest of it and really work through some of that, because I'm so afraid if I go out there on my own and I start rolling this out now, which I could, then I'm going to get so busy I'm going to lose sight of everything that I was trying to build and execute from the beginning. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I don't want to lose that because I think it's really special.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
More money can solve some of those problems for you. Though.
I'm sorry?
More revenue can solve those problems, though.
Correct.
Here's
More
what I would
revenue
say in
solves a
closing,
lot of
quickly.
problems.
I'm a lawyer, And if this doesn't work out for you, you find me and I'll hire you at my law firm and we'll provide this as a service.
Thank you. That's exciting.
I think that was the first job offer at Fast Track Challenge, so that's wonderful. Amy, thank you. As a person who has made thousands of PowerPoints, I think, this was a really good one. You had animation and icons and good alignment, so nice job. Thank you, judges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.